Sveiki, login piligrimai, su jumis ir vėl sveikinasi specialioji login tinklalaidė. Login jau ne už kalnų, susimatysime su jumis gegužės 30-31 dienomis Litexpo parodų rūmuose. O šiemet login dalyviai turės galimybę matyti ir startuolių pitchus. Startuolių pitchai grįžta į loginą. Dalyviai turės galimybę išvysti Startup World Cup Baltijos regiono varžybas, kurių metu startuoliai varžysis dėl patekimo į Startup World Cup finalą San Franciske ir dėl galimybės gauti net $1 milijono investiciją. Na, išties beprotiškas prizas, dėl kurio verta pakovoti. Startup World Cup organizuoja Pegasus Tech Ventures, vienas iš 3 didžiausių Silicio slėnio investuotojų, kurio portfelė yra tokios bendrovės kaip SpaceX, Airbnb ir aš tikiu, kad gali patekti ir Baltijos šalių startuolis. Na, išties unikali galimybė ir šiandien su mumis nuotoliu yra ypatingas svečias Bilas Reichertas, Pegasus Tech Ventures partneris. Su juo mes ir panagrinėsime, ko tikėtis iš artėjančio renginio, bei kaip geriausiai pristatyti savo startuolį potencialiems investuotojams. Hello, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Hello to you, and thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Bill, I would like to discuss with you how important are platforms like the Startup World Cup for young companies. Can you share a success story with us from past competition?
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for not just entrepreneurs, but for all of the stakeholders in the innovation ecosystem in every region of the world to have the opportunity to plug into the global innovation ecosystem. That was the big idea when we started Startup World Cup, about 8 years ago now. What we thought would be a brilliant opportunity would be to run these competitions with partners in every corner of the world in order to, one, find the best emerging technologies wherever they are in the world, because the creativity and innovation is not limited to Silicon Valley as much as maybe some of us once thought. And so our thought was, let's go reach out to all of these innovation ecosystems around the world, find these innovative entrepreneurs, and help connect them to the global innovation ecosystem and plug into Silicon Valley. So it's an opportunity not just for entrepreneurs, but for all of the stakeholders to get a wider perspective on what's going on worldwide and to do that more human-to-human connection of innovators, entrepreneurs, investors, and other stakeholders. So we started it about 8 years ago. I think our first year we did 15 cities around the world. And this year we're shooting to do 100 cities around the world. So now this has become one of the biggest and richest startup competitions on the planet.
Wow, that's truly impressive. And Bill, can you share with us what kind of impact a $1 million investment prize can make on a young startup? How did the past winners have utilized these funds?
Yeah. When we started out, we thought $1 million, wow, that will be just, mind-boggling, the richest prize in any competition. And what has been so interesting is that it really isn't just the money that has made the difference for these companies. What we've discovered is the companies that make it to the top 10 in San Francisco, that get on stage in front of 2,500 people, including hundreds of investors and scores of media, is being successful, getting on stage, winning in their local region, coming to San Francisco, getting on stage, has been probably the biggest impact. It's there are a lot of stories of not even the winner, but runner-up and other companies who, after the grand finale, they got approached by investors, they got approached by media, they got the opportunity to get exposure in what is arguably sort of the best place on the planet to get exposure, i.e., Silicon Valley. But yeah, so the companies that win, they get this sort of multiplied. And what we've discovered is that $1 million becomes an important sort of component of an even larger fundraising. So every company that has been a winner, from Japan to Boston to Vietnam to Canada, every one of them has raised additional capital on top of the $1 million, partly, if not largely, because of the exposure they got winning in their local region and then again in San Francisco. So it's a game changer for these companies. One of the companies that won in Japan a few years ago is telling us now that they're thinking they're going to be able to go public in the next few years. That's pretty extraordinary.
Wow, that is indeed. So as I understand, it's not like a winner takes it all kind of situation. So if you're in a grand finale, then you get all the exposure. That's truly impressive. And
a story. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, sure.
One of the semifinalists. So last year we had 50 or so companies in the semifinals, and at the semifinal competition 2 days before the final competition, one of the entrepreneurs got rushed by an angel in the audience who said, "Can I give you a check?" It was really extraordinary, and and I was wondering if that was just kind of over enthusiasm. I actually talked to that entrepreneur a few weeks ago who said, "Oh yeah, she invested in my company," and this company did not even make it to the finals, and so and she was pretty upset about that, but she nevertheless, even as a semifinalist, she wound up on stage and getting investment from an angel investor here in the United States.
Wow, that's a true success story. That's amazing. And could you tell us what startups should have in mind when pitching themselves into the final? Like how Pegasus Tech Ventures make decisions on who is gonna be a winner?
Yeah. So sort of starting at the regional competition, we encourage the regional judges. So in every regional competition, what we do is try to work with our partner to get sort of the best investors in the region to be the judges for that regional competition. And we encourage the judges to focus on finding the company that is most likely to succeed on a world stage. In other words, can they go global? Can they be successful at a global level, and will it be interesting to sort of global investors? So we're looking for companies that are most likely to succeed. So you've got to have a vision that your company can go beyond the local ecosystem. So that's an important element. And then the single most important element for making it all the way is you've got to have a compelling value proposition that is unique, that makes you 10 times better than any alternative out there. And so, unfortunately, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who might actually have that product, technology, value proposition, but when they pitch, they focus on their product and their technology rather than focusing on the benefits, the value proposition that makes their offering compelling to their target audience. And so, I come across this all the time, even with, trained American entrepreneurs. They get so, enthusiastic, wound up in their engineering, product, technology stack that they fail to be effective at communicating how this can be a game changer for their customers. And so we recommend they make sure that they bring to their pitch evidence that prospective customers, even if they're pre-revenue, but prospective customers who are saying, this is something we desperately need. This is something we desperately want. So that's probably the single most important thing for entrepreneurs to get across anytime they're communicating what it is they're doing. What is your compelling value proposition for which target group of customers, enterprise, small business, consumer, whatever?
Bill, I have visited Silicon Valley myself just a couple of months ago, and it's a truly, truly remarkable ecosystem. I really love to know that all the thought leaders are going there, and basically all the ideas are there. I have also visited some Baltic startups that are located in Silicon Valley. You yourself being involved with the startups globally, have you noticed any different specific kind of, I don't know how to say, maybe qualities, unique qualities in Baltic startups compared to those, let's say, just those in Silicon Valley or other parts of the world?
Yes, actually, I have. And what is interesting about Baltic startups that I've come across in Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia is that the entrepreneurs that I've come across from the Baltics are very international. When I go around the world, I discover that in a lot of these ecosystems, they're still very parochial, very local. It's part of the, history of the Baltics, good and bad, right? It's part of the history of the Baltics that you have to have an international perspective on things. And so, you cannot just be focused locally if you're in the Baltics. And so that is an interesting characteristic of entrepreneurs in the Baltics. And so, maybe it's somewhat surprising to some people, but for example, a seemingly small but really important factor is that all of the entrepreneurs I've met from the Baltics speak English very well. And, it's interesting. And, God bless the educational system there and the initiative there. But, it's been, our good fortune for those of us who grew up speaking English that it has become the language of choice for international innovation and entrepreneurship. And so that's been very valuable, I think, to entrepreneurs from the Baltics. And that relates to sort of both the mindset of entrepreneurs from the Baltics. They have this global mindset for historical reasons. And that has been, I think, extremely helpful to Baltics, entrepreneurs from the Baltics.
Thank you for such kind words. I will pass them to our Minister of Education.
Yes, absolutely.
Bill, and as a mentor to many entrepreneurs yourself, what piece of advice do you find yourself constantly giving to first-time startuppers, first-time business owners? There's a lot of, fairly common wisdom about, first-time entrepreneurs and startups around this issue of first, you've got to make sure you've got the right team, right? And the co-founding team is critically important. There's a lot of sort of inside baseball debate in the venture community as to whether or not sort of single entrepreneur founders can be successful. It is really hard. It's really hard
to be successful as an entrepreneur if you are a lone entrepreneur. And so you've got to build a high-performing team. And so when we're looking at a startup company as investors, we're going to be able to see, is your team, a high-performing team? Are you executing against, what you can do with very limited money? We want to see that you are just driving this thing towards success, whether or not you have money. And so when we come across an entrepreneur who says, well, I got an idea and I got a bunch of people who are willing to join me, if I can only get your money, we say, no, I want to see that you're making, you've got the scrappiness and the grit, if those words translate, to be successful on a little bit of money, not just a lot of money. So that sort of that founding, getting off the ground, getting out there is critically important. But the other thing that I do discover is there's a lot of coaching out there. There's a lot of pitch coaching out there that is actually doing damage to entrepreneurs. And so, unfortunately, I try to help entrepreneurs undo some of the bad pitch coaching that they've gotten. But the core of it is that there's this industry out there of coaching entrepreneurs that, unfortunately, it's made up of people who are really presentation coaches, not pitch coaches. And a pitch is not a presentation. And, unfortunately, a lot of pitch coaches don't understand that. And so a lot of entrepreneurs don't appreciate the difference between a pitch and a presentation. A presentation is when you've got a guaranteed 15 minutes or whatever it is. And And a presentation coach will tell you, you need to have a narrative arc that starts with a story and then sort of goes through the journey. And there's a hero and a villain, and it wraps up at the end. So, presentation coaching is wonderful. It's a valuable thing for you to learn, but it's different. It's different than a pitch. And the reality is, what most entrepreneurs don't understand is that over 95% of their pitches are going to be less than 30 seconds. And so, entrepreneurs have not been well coached in that regard, that every time you open your mouth, you're pitching. And so every time you introduce yourself, you're pitching. And so you've got to have, in a 20 or 30 second, opportunity, the ability to get across what it is you're doing that is so unbelievably compelling. That is why you get up in the morning every day, and why all of these other people, these other co-founders, have joined you in this journey. And so, entrepreneurs need to have that sort of built in. But instead, there are all these, pitch coach academies or whatever that, teach entrepreneurs elevator pitches or 2-minute pitches or 4-minute pitches. And that's just not the real world. It is the world of pitch day and demo day and all that sort of stuff, but it's not the real world of entrepreneurs. And so, I got so wound up in this over the years that a friend of mine said, "Bill, why don't you write a book on this topic?" And so I wound up writing a book on the whole topic of pitch coaching.
Amazing.
Which is called, the book is called, the book is called Getting to Wow.
Okay.
And what I tried to convince entrepreneurs of is, in the first 20 seconds of any pitch, even if you only have 20 seconds, you've got to get the other person to say, "Wow, that's amazing. You do that, you can do," So that's one of my big sort of efforts to try to improve the pitch coaching globally.
And we truly encourage all our listeners to listen to Bill's book, to read it. And I hope that all of the startups that will be competing, even in the regional finals, will get the audience and the jury to the wow effect. Our time is running short. Bill, finally, maybe as our listeners are, some of them are maybe aspiring entrepreneurs or investors, could you share one piece of advice or wisdom that has guided you yourself through your career?
Yeah. It's I consider myself to be extraordinarily lucky. So I've been very, very fortunate in my life. And what I have sort of on reflection observed, and actually it was my son who pointed this out, that at a dinner table conversation at one point, my son said, Dad's been lucky. He's always liked his job. And so what I have realized is that as I've gone through my career, sort of everything I've done has been in pursuit of something that I thought was obvious and inevitable. And so for whatever reason, as each of these opportunities has come to me, I've never sort of said, okay, I'm going to take a risk. And one of the things that I observe about the difference between sort of the entrepreneur and mindset, a lot of outsiders seem to think that entrepreneurs are risk takers. And there's this, common meme that entrepreneurs are risk takers. And what I've discovered is that when you talk to entrepreneurs who are really, really the best entrepreneurs, in my opinion, they don't think they're taking a risk. They don't think they're taking a risk. They think that what they're doing is obvious and inevitable. And, maybe the timing's going to be off. But I encourage entrepreneurs, it's more than just the calculation that, maybe this idea can make a lot of money. You've got to have deep inner conviction that what you are doing is obvious and inevitable. And so I think hopefully, and maybe maybe it doesn't always come, but, I've always had this in every sort of step of the way, this sort of inner conviction that this next thing is obvious and inevitable. And so I tend to look for that in entrepreneurs. Do you have a deep conviction in terms of what you're doing? Because if you don't have a deep conviction that what you're doing is obvious and inevitable, then, if there's going to be a bump in the road, then you're going to say, oh, drat, that didn't work, and you just move on. But the entrepreneurs who have the deep conviction, they hit a bump in the road and they just keep going. They hit a wall and they figure out how to get around it, how to get over it. And so I just encourage anyone, and it doesn't have to be in, tech entrepreneurship, anything you're doing, pick the thing that you have a deep conviction about, not the thing that sort of on paper looks like kind of the right thing or the best thing or the least risky thing to do. So I encourage, entrepreneurs to dig deep down, figure out where their conviction is, and focus on executing against that conviction.
Thank you, Bill, for very useful insights. I'm sure that all of the startups founders who are listening to us have written down many, many notes. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And looking forward to Startup World Cup in the Baltics.
Looking forward. Thanks. Tai buvo tiek šiandieną. Ačiū, kad buvote su Login tinklalaidė ir pasimatysime kitose mūsų laidose. Iki.